My guest today is award-winning filmmaker Hoku Uchiyama, who is a lover of fantasy films, horror, and animation. Now, his directing work has garnered tens of millions of online views and has been screened in festivals around the world. Now, he broke ground with his award-winning music video for Jason Webley and Amanda Palmer's Have You Seen My Sister Evelyn? And he and his sometimes directing partner, Adam Bolt, have made a name crafting high-energy, fun, technical commercials under the moniker Hoku and Adam. Now, it was their 2020 music video for Katy Perry's Harleys in Hawaii won the Webby People's Voice Award for Best Music Video. And, well, we're about to have some fun with this one because his newest short film, WHITCH, is about an intruder who acts strangely familiar and is hell-bent on performing a bloody ritual before midnight. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome award-winning filmmaker Hoku Uchiyama and his comedy horror short film, Witched, to the show. Welcome.
Real pleasure to be here, Ward. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome, and I am so honored, but I have to ask, where did your love for fantasy and horror come from?
I think Tim Burton was a gateway drug for me. I grew up in a kind of a suburb of the South Bay area that was a lot like those suburbs in Edward Scissorhands, and I remember seeing that film and feeling like, wow, not only does this speak to me personally, but it speaks to so much of, I don't know, just it's such a lovely analogy of the universe that I'm growing up in. And if you go start at Edward Scissorhands, you can start to discover Frankenstein and the old movie monsters, and then before you know it, you're just neck deep in horror. So yeah, Tim Burton was a gateway for me.
Well, that was actually what I was going to ask you, and you bring up Edward Scissorhands because it is, of course, Tim Burton brings us this endearing quirkiness. I guess that's what you could call it because everybody fell in love with Johnny Depp's character, and because there was something endearing about it. There was comedy within that film, and this is something that I've noticed this year in the area of short films. There is more comedy horror, uh, but your film, it actually made me laugh. And in a good way. So where in the world did you get the idea for such a story?
Yeah, I mean, I love, I love horror films, but I also really love things that are kind of horror adjacent. Like Tim Burton, I see as horror adjacent. A lot of Guillermo del Toro's films, which I also love, are kind of horror adjacent. And so the opportunity to do things that are horror comedy to me just really fit with what I love. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there are a lot of people in that area that call themselves witches. And as a kid, I found that really confusing. And I was like, are these malevolent Satan worshiping people? And as you get older, you realize like, no, these are neo pagans who practice practice a religion called Wicca, and are often very nice and are often kind of hippies. And I always thought it would be funny to imagine what would happen if one of these kind of more hippie Wiccan neo pagans met like kind of your actual like mythical witch. And so the idea was kind of like, what if an idea meets an idea? And that sort of share the same etymology, but are binary opposites. And so that's where the film idea came from.
Yeah, and it's funny because you really see that in this film because there are people that, they let, I don't want to really call it a hobby. Some people call it a lifestyle, but people may dabble in something until they come across someone who doesn't dabble.
Right.
That's someone who lives, breathes, and believe that they are part of a whole nother world. And you brought those two worlds together in this film.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. It's there's something there's something is so sweet and kind about basically all of the Wiccans I've ever met. And it was fun to think about. Okay, well, if I kind of took the impression that these people left me with, and then I think of one of the most hardcore. Try to imagine one of the most hardcore worst versions of of the Halloween witch, and just put them in a room together for 5 minutes, and just see what happens.
I don't, it's very rare that I see a film, a short film, less than 10 minutes. Yours is spot on five, where you give us a complete story. And when I watched it the first time, now the funny thing is for the audience, and you already know this, when the audience within the first minute and a half, it's just like, I mean, like total shock. And because it's not just horror, you bring the gore factor in. And one of my late dear friends was Herschel Gordon Lewis, who is known as the godfather of gore. And
Hmm.
so when I saw the scene, I went, Herschel, you would love this. and, and he loved to laugh too. And so because I asked when he passed away when he was 93, and I had asked him because he had done like 245 films, and I was like, Herschel, I
Wow.
go, no, I take that back. It was 45 films because he was a world famous copywriter in the midst of all that. And I asked him, I go, why gore? And he goes, well, one day I was watching a Western on television, and when they would shoot each other, nobody bled. And so
Violence
I'm
is
like,
the. Sorry, go ahead.
no, no, and he was just like, if you're gonna do that, you gotta create it and show it. And then for some weird reason, that's how he ended up getting into this. And so when I saw this, I'm like, because that's so that one scene with the old woman, I mean, you brought the A game to horror and gore in that scene because I mean, I can't imagine that people at Holly Shorts who saw this just probably felt the oh my gosh inside of them when they saw that scene.
Thank you. I mean, violence is. I mean, I think that question, why gore, is probably a question my mother asks me a lot of the time. But I don't. Violence is a great dramatic tool. Like fictional violence. Like I'm actually
Yeah, yeah.
very squeamish. I'm a very squeamish person when it comes to any real violence. Like if I see any real blood, even just a drop, on my finger or my wife's finger, I'm like, ah. But on screen, violence is a great dramatic tool, and it can also tell you that a character means business. Like Rosemary, the actress in this, we often talked about her character sort of being a little like a character you might find in a Coen Brothers movie, where there's a pendulum swing between this character seems kind of funny, and then this character really means business and scares you. And we thought it was important to establish early at the top that this character was dangerous. And and in a way, even though they're kind of funny and they're quirky, this character can hurt you. And hope that makes it a more fulfilling experience, both comedically and horror wise, as you go through it.
Yeah, when I was going through your film, I looked up Rosemary, and she is a person that, and you tell me if I'm right. Uh, she comes across very artistic, eclectic. She has her own vibe that a
Oh,
lot of
cool.
people don't have. Is that how
Yeah.
you would describe her?
Yeah, no, she is one of the most unique human beings I had ever had the pleasure to meet in my life. She is, yeah, just was an artist who, I only knew her very briefly, in the making of this film, but from what I learned from the stories that she told me and what I've read about her, did things entirely her own way, um, and was incredibly brilliant. But yeah, I mean, a true original. So yes.
Your opening scene. She gets out of the car. She walks up to the steps of this house. the first thing I notice is, and I may be going way off base here, but the house number was 2137, which added up to 13. Was that on purpose or a coincidence?
That is total coincidence. Actually, I've been with this film for a couple of years now. You were the first person to point that out, and I wasn't even aware of that. No, so thank you.
Well, I go deep on some of these films because I know how directors can be. They hide these little Easter eggs and these nuances, and sometimes it's like foretelling or foreshadowing for upcoming scenes or what the basis of it is. So I'm
Good
like,
grief! I
I'm going to look at
wish I was that.
everything.
I wish I no no. I wish I was that. So no, that house. We spent months looking for that house because it reminded me. We shot in Los Angeles, and it reminded me of the kind of craftsman homes you find in the Pacific Northwest, like in Berkeley, and and so that was very important. And it also laid out exactly like the storyboard drawings I had. So no, that just happened to be the address. So. No, that's another bonus point, and so thank you for pointing that out to me as well as the audience. So.
And I did laugh at the doormat.
That was custom made. Yeah, we custom made that for this.
Yeah, which please. I mean,
Yeah,
I literally heard the tone of voice when I read it.
yeah. I thought someone might actually have made that, but I couldn't find it online to buy, so I think we custom designed that ourselves.
Yeah, I think it would be a hot seller for some people. And in the film when Gladys started the sacrifice ritual, right then and there you knew. I mean, well, either you knew or you just thought she was full blown crazy to be a full blown witch, but the moment she painted the pentagram on the floor in blood, the light started to flicker, the wind was blowing inside the house, and I loved the look on the homeowner's face because it's like it proved that she was dabbling, but she had never crossed to the dark side.
Alicia is also brilliant. She has the most wonderful eyes. And one of the things that I talked about with both Alicia and Rosemary was that we wanted to leave a lot of space. And I also talked about this with the whole team. We wanted to leave a lot of space up until about halfway through our tiny little movie for this to be maybe a homeless woman who came in and was wandered into the wrong house and was particularly aggressive, but it could be real. Like, treat it as mundane for as long as possible, and that way when it actually the magics does start happening, it has more of an impact. Like, if we treated it as magic kind of from the very top, I think it would in some ways be less scary. Like, it's a little more scary when you think that, hey, maybe this is someone who's got mental problems or something like that, and then this might actually be a threat to my kid, and oh no, this person, it's worse than that. She's actually supernatural. So yeah.
Yeah, and see, not once did I think she was homeless. I thought she was crazy and scary. Oh my gosh. And see, now because when I watched it, I've known people who had been in the occult in the past. And
Hmm.
and they had relayed things to me that look, the dark side is real. And so did you do any type of research to kind of get the whole vibe of this film on the occult?
No, not too much. I mean, I've been around. I mean, I grew up in a place where you had both people who practiced, who practiced Wicca. I don't practice it, but also people who, in the Bay Area, there are people who are into the occult, and I didn't want to make a strong statement really about either. It was more that I thought that the general reputation that preceded both people who practice the occult and people who practice Wicca are so binary opposite that it would, I felt that there was a humor in bringing them in bringing them together. So it was a pretty painting either side with kind of a pretty broad brush, and more just sort of about one kind of impression versus another impression.
It is the, the major scene with Rosemary. So she's sitting in the chair. She's got the rabbit. I mean, you basically pulled a Fatal Attraction to us.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and, uh, and I mean, that whole scene is so shocking, scary at the same time. And when you cast Rosemary, how much convincing did it take for you to tell her that this was going to be a nude scene?
Well, so yeah, I mean, we had the script, and you take a look, you step back and you take a look, and you say, well, this movie features an elderly looking person who strips naked, kills an animal, and rubs its blood all over her body. And so the first question that comes to you is, who's going to do that?
That was my
And
question.
and there are yeah, I mean, there are more elderly looking folks in Southern California who would be willing to do this than you'd think. And so we held auditions, and we had a lot of really wonderful people come forth and read, and a lot of extremely talented actors. Rosemary ended up being the last person who auditioned, no joke. And she, what she brought to it was she looked a little older than she was, and she was also very scary. I found that a lot um, of the older actors who read were very talented, but there was a sweetness about them. And Rosemary both had the look and the acting chops, and she also just could be so scary. And I remember after the audition thinking, my gosh, this person really has it, but I wonder if they really read the brief. Do they know all the things we want to do? And so I asked her afterwards, and I said, hey, I was really impressed by your audition, but I just want to confirm, do you understand, what this role involves, the nudity and the blood? And she was like, yeah, and she talked about, some of, she worked in the cinema avant-garde in New York in the 70s. And I think more or less was telling me, like, look, I've done a lot of stuff. Your film really isn't all that edgy as far as I'm concerned. And so, like, I was like, great.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So I was like, fabulous. And so she, we did, we got an intimacy coordinator. We had prep days. We did a lot of work to just make sure that it was very clear to her and everyone on set, like, what we were doing. We had a close set. But yeah, no, Rosemary was very, very, was very, very game. And I think, this was, like she said, this was not not by far not the edgiest thing that she's been involved in her life. So,
Wow. Wow. Because so you said closed set. How many were on set when she did that?
boy, I want to say it was only the essentials. I don't remember the number, but it's like, you have like the DP, you have me, you have the sound folks, just the people, anybody who's setting up in between takes, we asked to leave, and makeup as well was there. But it's an experience that I hadn't had before. And I think part of that, and part of the reason why there's controversy around intimacy coordinators, but I actually thought it was great, because I think that sets are such crazy environments that you can get so focused on the technical or on balancing these different perspectives. And I think, when you're dealing with real vulnerability like this, you need to make sure that no matter how intense things get, you are minding what someone needs in a moment. So to me, one of the great things that an intimacy coordinator can have, and we had a wonderful intimacy coordinator on the show, was to say, hey, like, just to make sure that there's an advocate for the performers who are doing these really vulnerable things, and who are making sure that you are stopping and considering them, or that, you know, people aren't rushing on set when the performer isn't ready. There's just a lot of things that can get railroaded on a set if there's not an advocate for them there. So, this was my first time working within that context, and it was a big learning experience for me. And I was also just really grateful for our intimacy coordinator and just their collaboration with Rosemary to make sure that this was as comfortable and cool as it could possibly be.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed that you had an intimacy coordinator on set. I know that there are so-called A-list directors that are go, we don't need one, and then there's those that do. And I believe in this day and age, you need one,
I,
and for
yeah,
multiple reasons.
I would always want one if you're, I mean, yeah, like, I mean, if you're doing anything that involves someone, nude, and our film doesn't have any sexuality in it really, but, I think that, again, it is so, I mean, if you're on set, I think a good framework to look at is on set, it is easy to forget about, for me at least, feeding myself, right? Because I'm so stressed and distracted. So if you can forget that basic necessity, to me, that tells you that a set is a place where you can overlook not only the needs of yourself, but the needs of other people. And so I think that it's important to have somebody there, for as an advocate, for someone. So to me, yeah, to me, I would always want someone there in those scenarios, and I thought that they worked out great
In
in
that
this.
in that scene, did you do that all in one take?
No, no, no. I mean, I mean, if you look at that, if you look at the scene, there's a lot of jumping of time that's happening. Like when we rehearsed it a lot, and if you rehearse just the scene with the undressing, it takes like about 3 minutes in and of itself. And one of the thing I drew everything in advance, like I drew all the shots and storyboards and sequenced them in Premiere, and by doing that, you kind of can become aware of areas that you can jump and compress time. Because someone getting undressed, kneeling, holding an animal, like all of that stuff in real time is longer. It takes place in a longer span of time than I think is actually interesting. In the film, it takes place, that sequence of getting undressed, kneeling, murdering the animal takes like uh, lots of spoilers here. Uh, um,
Well, it's a 5 minute short film. It's kind of hard to hide it.
I know, I know. It's one of the hard things about this is how do you talk about it without talking about it. But all of that takes place in I think about 10 seconds. But in real life time, that's about 2 minutes. Um, and so a lot of it was going in knowing, okay, of these 2 minutes, these are the only pockets that we need to tell our story. And so we would break it up. We would say, like, okay, we just need the shirt to come off. We just need the skirt to come off. We just need now a kneeling shot. We just need a cutting shot, And so sometimes we would string those together and just keep the camera rolling. But generally, no. And kneeling and getting up is also difficult, to do. So you can do it. There's tricks you can do to make it, happen uh, in editing, that I don't think we actually did in real life. So no, to answer your question in a really long and clumsy way, it wasn't all in one take.
Well, one other thing that caught my eye is how did she how did she outline or how did she draw the pentagram in such perfect straight lines?
Oh, so what we did with that is I learned this on a music video that I had done once with drawing, but we had drawn the pentagram in white pencil on our fake floor and then had her trace that with her bloody hands. What we quickly learned is that the blood didn't really, like, it didn't actually smear on the floor in straight lines in the way that we wanted. So what we did is we shot a clean plate of her, like tracing the white pencil with bloody hands, and then we just painted the pentagram on the ground and then shot a clean plate of that. And then in After Effects, I just kind of revealed the pentagram being drawn as her hands went over it, and kind of combine the two shots together.
What a stellar editing job that was.
Hey,
I
thanks.
mean, the whole sequence was, I mean, it was seamless. It was spot on. I'm impressed.
I very much appreciate that. Thank you. It was a lot of it was. I mean, I work as an editor as well as a director, and a lot of this was I do a lot of work in animation where you build the sequence before you animate, and in this case, I built the sequence before shooting. So a lot of this was edited. Like I drew the storyboards and edited it and did a bunch of voices before going to production, and that also helped us hone in on exactly what we needed beforehand, because I could show the edit with the drawings to friends and trusted colleagues, and they would say, hey, it's a little long here, maybe try truncating this. And it also helped edit the script. And so to me, that kind of helps save and focus on money before you start hiring all the expensive talent and coming to set.
Yeah, the you appeared at Holly Shorts, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, you bring the audience in and it is like full blown. This is a crazy situation. And then full blown horror, but then Gladys's phone rings and I could not stop laughing. I went, wow. Didn't see it coming, but it was so funny because it was Rosemary's look on her face. Not a word. She didn't have to say a word. It was the look. And what was funny about that look? It's almost like the audience would like, it's almost like we felt the embarrassment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a weird way, like it's the Rosemary's character, the witch, in a weird way, is who you start identifying with more by the end of the film. Like I think you kind of start with Alicia's character, who's scared, and then there's kind of a switch where your identification kind of changes, and that's one of the things that I really like about the movie.
Yeah, yeah. And what even made it, what made that comical moment even funnier is that there were two houses on the same street, and one was dabbling in the Wicca movement, and then the other house was just full blown occult.
We lucked out in that actual house is actually across the street. It took us a long time to find our locations, but we lucked out that literally just look outside the window and it's right there.
Yeah, when at the beginning of the film when I noticed the doormat,
Yeah.
and then because I watched this film a few times, and then I see this very quick scene, and then I went, wait a minute. When I saw the Wiccan mama pillow, I thought you just literally just bookended this film perfectly. Because I saw the doormat, then I saw the pillow towards the end, and I went, oh, that is just so cool because she's like bragging in a way, but she's never crossed to the dark side. And she gets the full experience of the dark side. And I got to thinking, well, then maybe she doesn't want to be a Wicca anymore.
Well, like my understanding, like yeah, I mean, I don't practice it. My understanding is that is that folks who practice Wicca, it's an earth religion that
Yeah.
uses a lot of the same words like witch and coven, and but like I don't even know. I don't, as far as I know, I don't think that spiritual practice even really believes in the same devil that the mythical witches do. So it's like as I saw it, like they're kind of tuned into just entirely different channels. Like the the you know, Wicca is, kind of its own thing, and then the witches are sort of a an outgrowth of kind of a more, you know, biblical Christian, like,
Yeah, well,
you know,
it's like going back in history and you research the witches in Salem. And if you really research them, they weren't really witches. They were they were more into herbalism, and the local people didn't understand, people who knew how to make formulas using plant matter and other things, and then misread the whole situation. And but you bring these two different worlds together, and then I understand that you won the special jury award at South by Southwest this year. You just premiered at Holly Shorts. What has been the audience's reaction to the film?
I mean, you know, I have been so pleased. It's a very small piece. It's a very silly piece. And you hope that every project is a gamble, and you hope people are going to come along with you. And thus far, I mean, we have had such a warm reception. It's like, it's it seems to both scare and make people laugh, which I'm delighted by. It's like every creative person has all sorts of stories in them. I have really serious, heavy stories in me, and I have fun, silly stories in me. And in this case, the idea was, look, I would just like to, you know, if I'm going to spend the time to make a short film, I would like to show people a good time in this case at this point in my life. And so far, I feel lucky enough that a lot of the audience that have seen it has enjoyed it in that way, and they've been showed a good time. So I'm really grateful. And the awards at South by Southwest and at the other festivals that at some of the other festivals that we've been able to screen at have blown my mind. I'm absolutely delighted and super grateful.
So what's the most common question you get about the film?
A lot of it is about Rosemary. Like, where did you find this amazing person? I think her performance just blows people away. Um, and uh, I think, yeah, where did you find Rosemary? Where did the idea come from? Uh, uh, you know, um, let's see. The how did you do the rabbit? Which was all After Effects. We had a real rabbit on set, but anything that actually looked like it was hurting the rabbit was either a puppet or After Effects. Um, and yeah, I think those are primarily the three. And then sometimes, like you and I, we get into kind of a discussion about sort of witches and the etymology of the word and what it means to different people.
Yeah, and I can see why everybody would ask those questions, because there's just so much that you packed into 5 minutes, and the editing was absolutely flawless,
Thank you.
with this film. Now, do you have any plans on directing a feature film in the future?
I do, yeah. I mean, at the moment, I'm working on two projects. One is a creature feature that's, a horror, but kind of more on the fun side of horror. And then the other is a more sober, more serious minded, low budget thriller that I'm working on. So yeah, those are the two things I'm cooking at the moment.
Well, I'm gonna ask you because you've done a few music videos for Katy Perry, and so I want to ask, uh, what is the difference between directing a short film and then creating and directing a music video, and how far in advance does the artist know what the concept is?
Oh boy, yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I think the main difference is when you're doing music videos or commercials, you are a director for hire. So that can mean different things on different jobs. But generally the spectrum is, to some extent, you are working at the pleasure of your client. So, that means that, even either the client tells you exactly what they want from the top and you're executing that, or you're giving them an idea, but you're trying to appeal to what you think the client wants, and the client is telling you warmer or colder, and you're trying to sort of work within the parameters of what makes them happy. Versus with a short film, it's just about what makes me happy. It's like I'm just being a creative person. So, for music videos, the process often works is you get a song or an album, and you learn that, from the video commissioner, the musician has a certain set of parameters that they want to work with. Like they want to work in a certain visual style, or they want to, they have a story that they want to tell that they'd like you to fill in. And then you think of, before you get the job, you basically think of a take, you think of an approach that meets those parameters, that meets the song and the parameters that the video commissioner has given you. And then you, along with several other directors, pitch those parameters to the artist and the video commissioner, and whoever has the take that the musician and the record label likes the most wins the job. So yeah, and so the musician will know basically from hiring you what they're going to get, and they have selected you because they like what they thought your take was.
Because you're an artist, do you storyboard a music video?
Oh yeah, particularly because we work in animation. Animation involves, dealing with big teams of people, building big teams of artists and craftspeople, and so in order to get everyone on the same page, yeah, we draw every frame and then sequence it out, usually in Premiere to begin with. And even if it's not animation, I, as a creative person, tend to like storyboards. I have a lot of brilliant director friends who don't storyboard. They just show up to set and they find it. And for me, I find it, if there's time, it's very helpful to storyboard from the jump. It just tells you what you need, what you don't need. In the inevitable instance that there's a big compromise, it tells you, okay, this is what you've lost, and so this is what you need to make up for somehow. Like it just clarifies the parameters of what success is and what failure is, before you get to set, and I find that very helpful.
Well, during filming, how many times do you have to hear the song?
Oh yeah, I mean, I hundreds of times, and then in editing and in effects, hundreds more times. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's. I love all the music videos I've done, and I love all the songs that I've done music videos for, but I don't listen to them ever after after having completed the job.
Yeah, that I can absolutely believe. It's kind of like you hear a hit song on the radio and then they overplay it, and then you get to the point of like, I don't want to ever hear that song again.
Yeah, yeah. It's you can't really also have an experience with it that is remotely, I think, what the artist intended after you make a music video. All you think about is kind of, I don't know, the creative and physical labor that went into birthing the thing. So yeah, at that point, it's I don't know, it's a little like re-entering an office that you once worked at, whenever you hear that song again.
Well, I learned something new because, I think that Michael Jackson gets the credit for taking by pushing the limits of a music video to the point of it being a short film.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Thriller, Bad, yeah, like Beat It, like all of those videos. Uh, I am, I am of the age where I remember those videos coming on network TV, and just what an event it was. And part of what I think made them, I don't know, such campfires for people to gather around, was that they told stories. Like they had protagonists. They had narrative. They were beautiful. They were such rich pieces of filmmaking.
Oh,
those Michael Jackson videos.
and they're not only part of music history, they're really part of film history, but the film industry doesn't actually take heavy notice. And it's so funny that you did a horror comedy because just last year I was talking to a friend of mine and he said, "You know what? It's a genre we need more of. We don't see a whole lot." And then all of a sudden, I've seen three, maybe four this year. But yours is the one that really made me laugh because it was Rosemary's Look that just completely made the turn. So I love that. I think the genre that I never see anybody touch in the years of a short film. Because, when you go to a film festival, not all film festivals have a music video category, and there
Mhm.
are some that do. I've always wondered why hasn't anybody ever taken the step to do a short film musical that's not a music video?
They are rare. They are rare. They are out there. I think that it's something I would love to do someday. But there's at least one going around right now that I've seen called Singers, which is extraordinary,
Oh, I saw it.
absolutely
I saw it.
extraordinary.
I interviewed Sam Davis on the Singers, and yeah, extraordinary.
It,
And I
it, it, it
almost didn't consider it a musical though,
really. Now, why is that?
because the way that it starts, and in a way, now that you bring it up, it would fall into that category. But I was so focused, not only of them singing, I was focused on absorbing, I guess, almost the invisible backstories of the characters.
Yeah.
Because, he shot that in 35 millimeter. It just has this look and feel to it. But to be considered a musical, then I would say that The Singer stands on its own.
Oh man, just the tech. You can smell that movie. Like it's so textured. Like you just like you feel every like I love that film to pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the full story on that film was no script, no professional actors, and then
I
35 millimeter.
I learned that at the screening that I saw it at. I think I saw it at Salute Your Shorts, which was right around the time of Holly Shorts as well. And it was I found that, see, that's an example of somebody who works in a totally different way than I would, but the results are just freaking brilliant. I mean, they're so extraordinary. That is that is I don't think I as a creative would have been able to find my way to water in that way. But but Sam's work on that, he's coming at it in such a different way, and he came up with, I don't know, just the most feeling of just brilliance and precision and heart. And it's just, I don't know, it's a testament to the fact that there are, as many ways to water as there are creatives. That he did such an extraordinary job with that picture.
Yeah, I'm just a huge lover of short films. The variety. There is far more variety in storylines and topics that features will never give us.
I have a theory that the shorter something is, the more room to experiment you have, which is why music videos are really cool. Like the longer something is, I think the more an audience is going to expect certain traditional frameworks. It's harder to deal with a really experimental 30-minute project or a really experimental 2 hour long project. It does exist. Like there are many amazing experimental long form films. But I think generally audiences, particularly mass audiences, will be open to broad experimentation where you can really just try to break the medium and discover new forms of it when things are kind of small. And that is the magic of short films and music videos, is you can really just mess with the form, and there'll still be a lot of people, I think, who will be happy to take it and to absorb it.
Hoku Yukiyama's comedy horror short film, Witched, is an absolute delightful watch. It is perfectly balanced between scary horror, a little bit of gore, and downright comedy. In comedy, it's not what is said, it's the pause. It's the look that delivers. And actress Rosemary Horschild delivers a stellar performance as this wayward witch, and you may get a little jump in your seat when you watch it. But for a 5-minute short film, it absolutely, truly delivers the shock, the horror, the scare, and the comedy. The best horror comedy short film I have seen this year. And Hoku, I want to thank you so much for not only sharing this wonderful film with me today, but absolutely reaching out to me so that I wouldn't miss it.
Ward, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and more. And remember, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.